Breathe. She doesn't miss you. She misses control. I know what you're thinking. You want to believe it's love. That the late night text, the sudden reappearance, the carefully timed post, that it all means she finally realized what she lost. But here's the truth you need to hear. You think it's love, but it's leverage. Marcus Aurelius warned us centuries ago, power tempts the fragile mind. And she's been wielding that power, not through force, but through your reaction to her absence, her attention, her emotional weather. Today, you're going to see her need for control for what it really is. Not love, but dependency. Dependency on your attention, your energy, your response. Because every man who begged for closure wasn't really asking her to explain. He was begging for permission to let go. You don't need her permission anymore. Let's break the pattern. 1. She misses control. Not you. Understanding female control. Dynamics. When her name lights up your screen, after weeks of silence, something inside you stirs. Your chest tightens. Your breathing shifts. For a moment, the world feels lighter, as if maybe she finally realized what she lost. But that feeling, that rush in your body, isn't love returning. It's memory. It's your nervous system recognizing an old pattern. It's the echo of every time she gave you just enough to stay hopeful and then disappeared just long enough to keep you reaching. She doesn't miss you. She misses the control she had through you, the steady access to your energy, your time, your attention. This is the essence of female control dynamics. Subtle power built through emotional dependency. She misses the stability you gave her while she kept you in uncertainty. What she's seeking now isn't reconnection. It's reassurance. The reassurance that she still matters to you, that she can still move you. And that's where you must see clearly. If she truly valued who you are, your calm presence, your standards, your self-respect, she would never have vanished. Genuine appreciation doesn't come and go with convenience. What comes and goes is need. The need to feel desired. The need to feel in charge. The need to prove that she still has emotional influence over you. This is how women control men without realizing it through emotional rhythm, attention cycles, and subconscious validation. Every time you respond right away, you confirm that influence. Every instant reply, every reopened door, every moment you make yourself available when she decides to reappear. It teaches her that your presence can be summoned, that your attention has no boundaries, no conditions, no self-respect attached. But freedom begins where reaction ends. The Stoics understood that power lies in what you choose not to respond to. The moment you stop letting her actions dictate your emotions, you take back control of your internal state. She only holds power when you surrender it through reaction. So when she reappears, and she will, this is your moment to stay centered. Practice it with awareness. 1. Pause. Don't reply instantly. 10 seconds. That's enough. 2. Breathe. Feel the urge to react, but don't move with it. 3. Ask yourself, am I responding from clarity, or am I relapsing into the old pattern? 4. Decide consciously. If your motive is peace, reply when calm. If it's validation, stay silent. 5. Track it. Notice how many times in a week you can delay reaction by at least 10 seconds. This isn't about games or punishment. It's about creating space between impulse and action, between old wiring and new awareness. In that space, your dignity breathes again. When you no longer react, you stop being a resource she can access at will. You stop being a backup plan for her self-esteem. You become a man defined by his own rhythm, not by her timing. That's the essence of relationship control, not controlling others, but mastering yourself within the emotional dynamic. Because what most men call love is often emotional manipulation, disguised as affection. When she reaches out, she's not reconnecting, she's recalibrating her sense of control. Her reaching out isn't proof that you matter. It's proof that she still seeks validation. She's testing to see if the thread still connects, if she can still pull, and you'll still respond. But when you stop feeding that thread, when you no longer reward inconsistency with attention, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer an option. You're a man she lost access to. And in that quiet moment, when you choose calm over reaction, something powerful happens. You return to yourself. And that's where real strength begins. 2. She plays with emotion. You master the game of power. Dynamics in relationships. Most men don't see it until they're already caught in it. Every emotional dynamic has direction. One person leads, the other follows. One sets the tempo, the other scrambles to match it. She understood this long before you noticed. Maybe not through calculation, but through experience. She learned that emotion can bend reality, that feelings can become tools in power dynamics in relationships. When she cries, you soften. When she withdraws, you chase. When she withholds affection, you push harder to prove your worth. It isn't always emotional manipulation. Sometimes it's instinct, a pattern carved through repetition. She changes her emotional weather, and you adjust your behavior to match the storm. And when that pattern locks in, something subtle but dangerous happens. You stop responding to her as a person. You start reacting to the anxiety she creates inside you. You over-explain, over-give, overreach, trying to make her understand your heart, your reasons, your truth. Meanwhile, she stays silent. Not because she's processing, but because she knows silence pulls you closer. It makes you fill the gap with more effort, more emotion, more proof of your devotion. This is how women manipulate men, not always through words, but through emotional rhythm. They sense your sensitivity and steer it consciously or not. And when you follow that rhythm without awareness, you lose your ground. You chase. She asks for space. You reassure. She doubts your sincerity. The imbalance deepens not through logic, but through energy. You burn at high intensity while she observes in calm detachment, watching how far you'll bend before you break. The painful truth is this: the more you bend, the less she respects the shape you've become. The Stoics understood that discipline is the foundation of freedom, even in love. When you master your internal state, you stop being controlled by emotional chaos. You stop reacting to her moods and start responding from composure. That's not coldness, that's emotional intelligence. That's ownership of self. Emotional strength isn't about resistance. It's about steadiness. The ability to remain grounded when emotion tries to drag you into turbulence. That's what it means to hold your center, not to close your heart, but to open it with discipline. The shift is simple in concept, but difficult in practice. Detach without hostility. This isn't about using violence as punishment or mirroring her behavior. That's just ego hiding behind strategy. What you're cultivating is calm authority, the quiet certainty that you no longer move to someone else's rhythm. Let her emotions pass through like weather. You don't fix them. You don't absorb them. You let them exist. You stay steady. And when you choose to respond, do it with presence, not urgency. Practice this deliberately. 1. Pause before reacting. Give yourself 10 seconds before you speak or text. Feel the impulse, then breathe through it. 2. Observe the energy. Notice whether your response comes from peace or fear. 3. Speak slowly and briefly. Words lose power when rushed. Say what's true. No defense, no over-explaining. 4. Let silence stand. Don't rush to fill every gap. Stillness is a boundary too. 5. Hold your frame. Remember that your composure teaches others how to treat you. This isn't about playing games. It's about presence, showing that you are guided by your principles, not by her moods. The calm one always holds control, not by force, but by stillness. In every room, whether business, conflict, or love, the person who can remain quiet under pressure defines the atmosphere. The loudest doesn't lead. The most reactive doesn't win. The steady one commands respect without demanding it. Relationships follow the same law. The man who can remain centered while everything shifts around him becomes the anchor in the storm. He defines the pace through grounded energy, not control. And that's the moment the power dynamics in relationships change. She begins to notice. Her emotional tactics lose their effect. Her silence no longer makes you chase. Her tests no longer move you off balance. Slowly, the dynamic resets, not because you fought for dominance, but because you stopped playing altogether. Calm men rule chaotic spaces. They don't chase storms. They outlast them. They don't match volatility. They neutralize it through presence. And when she finally realizes she can no longer shake your rhythm when her emotional leverage stops working, something in her changes too. Her control fades, not because you took it, but because you stopped giving it away. 3. Your reaction feeds her power. The hidden truth of how women control men control doesn't always appear as dominance. Sometimes it hides behind subtlety, a quiet precision that knows exactly which word, which tone, or which silence can move you. She doesn't have to argue or raise her voice. She only has to press the right button, the one that makes you react, defend, or prove yourself. And every time you do, you give her what she's after. Not agreement, not peace, relevance. This is the essence of how women control men, not through open confrontation, but through emotional leverage. It's part of the dark psychology in relationships, the unspoken power game, where emotion becomes a tool of influence. Each time you react, defend, or explain, you reinforce her position as the emotional center of your world. It starts with small moments, a careless remark, a soft insult wrapped as humor, a reminder of something from the past that still stings. And almost instantly, you respond. Your tone sharpens your pace, quickens your mind, scrambles to correct, to explain, to justify. And she notices. She doesn't look moved. She looks satisfied. Because in that moment, she confirms something important. She can still reach you. She still matters enough to disrupt your calm. She can still make you lose composure. That's the quiet game beneath the surface. Not about being right or wrong, but about maintaining emotional control. As long as you keep reacting, you keep feeding the toxic relationship dynamics that keep her in control. She doesn't need dominance. She just needs your emotional participation. Your reaction is her validation. The Stoics understood a truth that most men forget. Withdraw from drama, not from compassion. Detachment isn't cruelty. It isn't coldness. It's awareness. It's refusing to let another person's chaos become the atmosphere you breathe. You can care deeply and still refuse to be consumed. You can acknowledge pain without carrying it. You can stand present without being pulled into every emotional undertow around you. True strength lies in restraint. It's the art of feeling everything and still remaining steady. It's lowering your tone instead of lowering your worth. When tension rises, when she says something meant to provoke, when your body starts to tighten, you pause, not to suppress emotion, but to gain control over what comes next. Practice this presence. 1. The 3-breath rule. Inhale, exhale, pause. 3 calm breaths before you respond. In those few seconds, you reclaim choice, the ability to act from awareness, not impulse. 2. Track your reactions. Throughout the day, notice each moment you get pulled into emotional reactivity. Each time you defend when silence would have spoken louder. Each time you over-explain when stillness would have held more power. 3. Observe without judgment. Awareness itself begins to dissolve the pattern. You might wonder, if I don't react, am I being weak? Am I just taking it? No. Weakness rushes to defend itself. Fragile egos need to be understood instantly to prove their point before they lose ground. Strength doesn't panic. Strength can wait. Calm is not passivity. Calm is pressure under control. It's power, contained, directed, and disciplined. It's the ability to feel the full wave of emotion without letting it move your center. That's not avoidance. That's mastery. This is male emotional detachment, not indifference, but inner sovereignty. It's choosing to remain grounded, even when emotion tries to drag you into reaction. It's emotional discipline as defense, not distance. And here's what happens when you stop feeding the cycle. It starves. Not because you fought harder, but because you stopped supplying it with energy. Drama only survives with 2 participants, 1 to provoke, 1 to respond. When you remove your reaction, the cycle collapses on its own. She can repeat the same words, the same tone, the same tests, but when they land on stillness instead of resistance, when they meet calm instead of chaos, they lose their effect. Her control fades. Her leverage disappears. And as your calm becomes consistent, not perfect, but steady, everything shifts. The volatility she once fed on no longer exists. The dynamic she controlled no longer functions. What's left is space, quiet, clean, self-contained space. A space where you're no longer performing for relevance, no longer trading your peace for validation. A space where you exist on your own terms, calm-centered, untouchable. 4. She can't release control. You must understanding female control, dynamics, and power dynamics in relationships. Her need for control isn't always manipulation. It isn't a game or a scheme. It's survival instinct shaped by experience. Somewhere along the way, she learned that influence equals safety, that if she can control how you feel about her, she can protect herself from being left behind. This is the foundation of female control dynamics, the invisible structure beneath many modern connections. She doesn't crave love in the way you think. What she truly fears is losing her ability to affect you. Because when her words no longer move you, when her silence no longer pulls a reaction, when your focus no longer turns toward her, she loses power over her own story. Her sense of worth begins to tremble. That's why she posts the photo, the caption that feels like a message, but hides behind ambiguity, the story timed just right. It's not about reconnection. It's a test, a quiet way to ask, can I still make him look? And if you do, if you check, if you scroll, if you watch the thread remains unbroken, you've told her, without saying a word, that she still has access to your energy, that she's still relevant. This is where power dynamics in relationships silently play out through attention. The one who controls where attention flows controls the emotional current. The Stoics had a truth that slices straight through this pattern. He who needs nothing cannot be ruled. When you stop needing her attention, her validation, her recognition, when you stop needing to know what she's doing or who she's with, you become untouchable. Not cold, not disconnected, just free. Free from the hunger for external confirmation. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, a gentle withdrawal from everything that no longer serves your peace. You don't need to make an announcement. You simply realign. So you unfollow. You mute. You step away from the digital places where her presence still lingers. Not to punish, not to send a message, not to prove anything. You do it because your peace is sacred, and this small action protects it. You're not rejecting her. You're respecting yourself. But here's where most men stumble. They unfollow with one hand and keep checking with the other. They remove her from their feed, but still type her name into the search bar. They mute her posts, but still watch her stories in silence. They call it detachment, but it's still surveillance. That's not freedom. That's the same prison, just with different walls. This is where male emotional detachment must evolve from performance to principle. Detachment isn't pretending not to care. It's reclaiming your mind as sacred ground. The practice begins here. 1. Replace curiosity with clarity. Each day, write one line. What drained me today? 2. Observe the pattern. Notice how often her image, her name, or her online presence re-enters your thoughts. 3. Reclaim your attention. When you catch yourself checking, stop. Remind yourself that attention is energy, and energy is life. Every time you wonder, every time you look, you spend a part of yourself on someone who isn't there. You're giving her space in your mind that no longer belongs to her. This is mind control psychology at play, not in a manipulative sense, but as a reflection of how your thoughts can be directed by emotional attachment. The real mastery lies in reversing that current. When your mind serves your peace, not your craving, you regain inner sovereignty. It's like lifting weights. Strength doesn't come from reacting to the strain. It comes from control, from holding form, even when it burns. Her attempts to regain influence are no different. They're resistance. They're the pressure you hold against. You don't need to push back. You just maintain form. And as you do, something begins to shift. When you stop feeding the loop dissolves. When your attention no longer sustains her sense of relevance, her control fades. Slowly, she mirrors your stillness. Not immediately, not consciously, but eventually. When she sees you're not checking, not reacting, not responding, she stops reaching. Because the power she thought she held was never hers. It was yours every time you gave it through reaction, attention, or thought. Attention is energy. Protect it. Because when you pull that energy back into yourself, everything changes. You stop being someone she can move. You become someone she no longer has access to. That's not rejection. That's remembrance. The quiet realization that your energy, your focus, your presence are sacred resources, and they belong only to you. 5. When you detach, her power breaks the truth about how women control men and power, dynamics in relationships. There's a moment that arrives quietly. No argument, no final scene when everything changes. When you stop playing, the game ends. She doesn't lose because you defeated her. She loses because the game only existed through your participation. Your detachment doesn't just shift the power. It reveals the truth that was there all along. Her control was never real. It was borrowed. And you were the one lending it. This is the hidden nature of how women control men through emotional engagement, not authority. Their influence thrives only when you keep reacting, explaining, and proving. Think back to how it used to feel. She wouldn't reply for hours, sometimes days. You'd watch your phone, check messages, replay conversations, wondering what you said wrong, what you could fix, what you needed to do to make her engage again. She had power because your emotions waited for her approval. Now the roles have reversed. She's the one who notices your silence. She feels the absence of your explanations, your efforts, your presence. She checks her phone, refreshes her notifications, writes messages she doesn't send. She's searching for the same influence she once had, but the source is gone. You've disconnected, and in that quiet distance, something becomes clear. She was never the powerful one. She only held what you gave her. That's how power dynamics in relationships truly work. They're not fixed structures, but exchanges of emotional energy. When one person reclaims their focus, the balance resets. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Energy always returns to its source. When you stop projecting your need, your anxiety, your longing onto another person, that energy flows back to you. It doesn't come back empty. It comes back restored. You start to realize that you were the generator all along. She was only reflecting what you were giving away. But this is where many men lose their footing. They discover male emotional detachment, and then they weaponize it. They use silence not to find peace, but to make her feel what they once felt. They withhold affection to prove control. They turn calmness into strategy, a quiet form of revenge disguised as strength. That isn't mastery. That's ego pretending to be wisdom. True calm isn't about winning. It's about healing. It's about letting go of the performance, the need to show you're unaffected. This is where emotional intelligence separates a wise man from a wounded one. It's the capacity to observe your motives, to stay aware of your emotions, without letting them control your response. So, here's what to do. Before you sleep each night, write one simple question. Did I act from peace or from ego? Answer it honestly. Don't judge yourself. Just observe. Did your silence protect your peace, or was it meant to make her wonder? Did you step back because you've grown, or because you wanted her to chase? The answer defines the path you're on. One leads to freedom. The other leads to another kind of cage, quieter, but still locked. High-value men understand this difference. Their strength doesn't lie in punishing detachment, but in peaceful independence. They don't withdraw to manipulate. They withdraw to maintain clarity. They don't seek validation from reaction. They find meaning in stillness. Mastery isn't about making her chase. It's about not needing her to. Real detachment doesn't care whether she's watching your silence or checking your profile. It doesn't measure your worth by her reaction. It simply exists, balanced, grounded, self-contained. That's the difference between silence used as proof and silence lived as peace. And when you reach that point, when you stop performing your detachment, when you no longer need to prove calmness to anyone, something inside settles. Clarity begins to surface. You see her as she truly is, not as the version your longing created. You see the dynamic for what it was, not a battle of love, but a loop of control. You see yourself, the man who gave his power away, and the man who finally took it back. That kind of clarity isn't angry. It isn't triumphant. It's still, like water that's finally stopped shaking after being stirred for too long. And from that stillness, her power dissolves. Because power in relationships isn't something someone holds over you. It's something you hand over. When you stop giving it, there's nothing left for her to grasp. She can't lose what was never hers. She can't break what she never built. Your peace, your center, your self-possession, they were always yours. You just forgot for a while. Now you remember. Not with bitterness, not with pride, but with calm recognition. You've come back to yourself, quiet, grounded, whole. And in that return, you find what she could never give you and can never take away, the simple truth that you were already complete. 6. Peace is the final power move. The mastery of power dynamics in relationships and dark psychology in relationships. There's a level beyond detachment, beyond tactics, beyond the idea of mastery itself. It's the space where you no longer have to maintain your composure because you simply are composed. You've arrived at neutrality, not cold, not indifferent, just steady. The quiet understanding that no one's emotions have the power to dictate your internal world anymore. This is the highest form of awareness in power dynamics in relationships, when your peace no longer depends on how someone behaves toward you. It's the moment your emotional world becomes self-governed, untouched by external chaos. You see her again, maybe by chance, maybe by design. The same eyes, the same voice, the same energy that once made your chest tighten. But this time, nothing moves inside you. Your heart doesn't race. Your thoughts don't spiral. There's no speech waiting behind your teeth, no resentment asking to be heard. That isn't numbness. It's not armor. It's peace. The calm recognition that the person who once had access to your emotions no longer holds the key. This is where the truth of dark psychology in relationships becomes clear. Control and attachment were never about love. They were about influence. Once that influence ends, the illusion of connection collapses. You don't need revenge. You don't need reaction. You simply rise above the psychological game itself. The Stoics said it clearly ruling yourself is the highest form of power. Not ruling her, not controlling outcomes, not manipulating perception. Yourself. When you master your reactions, your impulses, your internal weather, you find the power most people spend their lives chasing in others. But here's where many men lose themselves. They confuse detachment with avoidance. They use peace as a way to hide from pain instead of to understand it. They numb out, call it maturity, and never actually heal. Real peace doesn't deny pain. It faces it. It looks straight at the discomfort, the sadness, the disappointment, the loss, and still chooses not to be controlled by it. It doesn't bury emotion. It absorbs, it learns from it, and lets it pass. This is the emotional maturity that separates high-value men from those who simply pretend not to care. It's not coldness, it's composure. It's emotional depth with discipline. True strength isn't in avoidance. It's in the ability to remain open without being consumed. Try this. At the end of each day, write down one thing you no longer seek validation for. Maybe it's her approval. Maybe it's needing to be seen as the good one. Maybe it's proving you've moved on. Write it down. One line a night. Watch the list grow. Watch yourself grow lighter. Each piece of validation you release returns to you as strength. Every ounce of approval you stop chasing becomes energy you own again. Peace is power, not the loud kind that dominates, but the quiet kind that moves through the world without forcing anything. The kind that walks into a room and shifts the energy without a word. It doesn't need to react. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need to control, because it's already whole. This is the essence of male emotional detachment done right. Not withdrawal, but mastery. You don't disconnect to punish. You detach to preserve clarity. Tonight, test this truth. Spend the evening offline. Let silence remind you where your real power lives. Not in the scroll, not in the stories people tell, not in who's watching, not in who isn't. It's here, in the stillness, in the breath you're taking right now. And in that stillness, something shifts for good. You stop existing as a character in her story, the version she edits when it suits her emotions, the memory she revisits to feel wanted or justified or missed. You become your own author, your own narrative. your own peace. That's the final move, not because it wins against her, but because it frees you from the need to. You started this journey in pain, believing she missed you, hoping her silence meant regret, that her return meant closure. But clarity arrived. You saw the truth. She didn't miss the man you are. She missed the control she had. And from that recognition, you did something rare. You practiced restraint without resentment, distance without hostility. You stopped feeding chaos. You stopped giving your energy to someone who only wanted access, not connection. That's what every piece of dating advice for men should point toward. Not strategy, not tactics, but sovereignty. You learned that understanding her behavior doesn't mean chasing it. It means seeing the structure beneath it, understanding women without being pulled into their emotional storm. And in that silence, you found something deeper than approval dignity, not born from revenge, not from proving anything, but from peace itself. Your calm became your strength. Your silence became your respect, not for her, but for yourself. Remember this. Calm is my control. If this message landed with you, write it in the comments. I don't chase energy that drains mine. Let that be your statement, your quiet boundary. Then act on it. Block the noise. Unfollow what disturbs your balance. Reclaim what's always been yours to protect your energy, your presence, your peace. Your power was never hers. It was only misplaced. Now it's time to take it back.